Okay. Advance. All right, our next presenter is Laura Lodes from Altamira. Laura is the Air Practice Manager for EnviroClean. She specializes in air quality permitting and compliance, and her primary clients are oil and gas, refineries, power plants, and foundries. She works for a number of the other manufacturing facilities. Welcome, Laura.
Hello, how's everybody? So as I get to follow Karen, I'm not sure I want to follow Karen in the Quado BCA register that presentation, but we'll go ahead and do this. So I'm moving it over here. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to not trip and fall and kill myself as I have to, because I like to move around anyway. So I'm going to talk through the rules. I don't know if everybody's familiar with what New Mexico did this past year. And it was not done through NMED. It was done through the Oil Conservation Divisions and OCD. And it's the waste, they call it their waste management rule, waste reduction rule. And so they've done that for a waste minimization of natural resources, mainly in the methane front of this one. So see what we've done here. And so they've gone through and done that. We've got 20 parts, 27 and 28. 27 goes over what's happening for basically the well side of the operations. 28 is going to be for your midstream side. And this is in the New Mexico rules. And I don't know if you're used to dealing with NMED, this is over in the OCD. So this is going to be not your permitting, not your normal world in that regard. This is with the Oil Conservation Division. And this is where I've seen some gaps because we've always had our flaring reporting. I'm sure if everybody's been used to doing the C129s, the C115s, now we've got 115Bs. And this is where they're trying to reduce the amount of flaring and venting of natural gas. They've set standards for what they want for the rules and how they want us to get it down. Do I think this is going to be a framework we're going to see other states follow? I absolutely do. And I'll tell y'all that up front. Do I think that this is something that somewhere down the road, EPA and Karen and them are going to build off of? I absolutely do. So I'm not going to be there and say anything else about it other than if we as an industry can make this work in New Mexico, they're going to take it and use it against us and say, you can make it work here, you can make it work elsewhere. So we all need to look at that and be prepared for it, in addition to the fact that we've got to comply with this mess that is this additional rule on top of the rest of what we're doing. So it came out last year in May 25th. And so we've started when you're doing your wells, you got to start filing their natural gas management plan. This is where they don't want the stranded gas. They want to make sure you've got doing what you can to capture right off front, and we're not doing the unnecessary venting. Starting October 1st, you were doing monthly reports, and then now they've gone to these October 1st. We're starting to look at the fourth quarter. I don't know how many of y'all had to do the text delimited file to shove that thing into OCD's system for 115Bs. But I think anybody who did knows it was a small programming nightmare to get it out of your thing and into the correct text delimited format to get that shoved up and in. And their template was not right that they gave us as a go by. So even though you maybe didn't have some of the sources of emissions in that template, you still had to go in and put zeros in if you ever wanted that thing to validate. That was definitely a lesson learned last month. Not the lesson I like to learn in first quarter when we're trying to do tier 2s and emission inventories and greenhouse gas reporting across the board, but we did learn it. So now this month, we can prepare for the fact that we're doing it again in May. So we've got our next quarter, and so we need to be getting ready for that. I'm hoping everybody's gathering it. October 22nd of this year. So we're talking, what is that, 15 days from now? You're going to start submitting your 115B monthly on or after the 15th day of the second month following the month in which flared or gas was. So they're basically going to give you 60 days to do your reports. Starting June 22nd, operators shall provide a copy of the 115B to the New Mexico State Land Office for a well or facility in which the state owns a royalty interest, and the operator shall notify all royalty owner interests of their ability to obtain the information. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, you're right. So I'm doing my math on the fly here, but it's the 2 months after. After May 25th, the operator shall conduct AVOs. So you should be doing your weekly AVOs to monitor all components, including flare stacks, thief hatches, closed vent systems, your pressure reliefs, pretty much everything. Weekly inspections during the first year production on a well or facility with an average daily production greater than the 60,000 cubic feet. Then you can go to monthly inspections with at least 20 days between your inspections on a well facility with the average day after that, or on shut-in and temporarily abandoned or inactive wells. So you can start to reduce it down the line. This is where, you know, she's talking about weekly monitoring, stuff like that in Quad O, B, and C. That's what worries me. This at least is an AVO. It's not taking your OGI camera out there. But that does worry me with some of those comments those NGOs are going to have going down the road with some of those other rules. If they make us do weekly monitoring here, then that's going to hurt, I think, the arguments on the federal side for why we don't have to do it with logistics. Now, so that's one of the pieces. The operator shall implement an operations plan to minimize the waste of natural gas on each non-contiguous natural gas gathering system. So this is under 28 when we get into gas gathering. And so this is going to be your gas gathering lines and what they're doing there. They're tying it in. The idea here is they want the gas gathering to stay up so the wellheads don't get shut in, so you're not venting at the wellhead. So that's the overall goal of this rule, is to do a major reduction in emissions by 2026. So the natural gas, they have to start having, as of May, within 60 days following the date, the natural gas, or within 60 days following the natural gas gathering system coming into place in the service, you've got to file your plans. The 90 days was in August. I'm hoping everybody got their gas gathering system plan in place because those were due. I don't know if you guys have looked at all at what NMOCD has been doing for penalties lately on some of this stuff if it hasn't been filed, but I've seen penalties out of them that we've never seen before. I know of at least one client that had always waited until they kind of got the trued up dates and were filing some of their 115s and some other forms, I'll say a little bit later. Always been that way. And they've been hit with some hefty penalties. We know some who did not get their 115Bs filed and some of these plans. So if you're not doing it, you're going to have to get these things filed. So for natural gas gathering system to which the operator added a new gathering pipeline during the calendar year, you've got no later than March 31st the following year to get it updated. So hopefully you submitted your plan last August. Hopefully you didn't add anything between August and December. If you did, then March 31st, last week, you needed your updated plan. Otherwise, we've got a year and you can get your plans updated. Systems overview. What are we looking at here? A lot of it looks like your PHMSA stuff. If you've got DOT regulated pipelines, what you're doing for this under the OCD rules for gas gathering is going to look a lot like what you have to do under your DOT stuff. You're looking at your age of your pipeline, whether it's regulated or non-regulated lines, and things like that. Routine operations and maintenance. Your pigging, right-of-way, patrols, leaks, surveys, your pipeline marketing, all of that has to be looked at. Cathodic protection. Do you have that on your pipeline? What are you doing there? And what are your procedures to reduce releases, to minimize your venting and flaring procedures for reporting? This, again, its overall goal is to reduce the loss of methane we've got throughout the system in New Mexico. After May, for here, similar to what we see on the wellhead side, we're going to see AVOs being conducted starting last May. So we're almost a year in. We've got weekly compressor inspections for most of your compressors, your dehighs, and treatment facilities. And then annually, the entire length of the pipeline system using an AVO technique, alarm technology, aerial visual inspections, or other valid methods to detect leaks. Aerial visual, this is where I think we're going to see some of the stuff with the drone surveys. Like Karen mentioned before, we're seeing the technology has evolved. This is where we're staying ahead of what they're looking at with it. But I think some of these things are driving it. And so this is where I see the biggest issues coming down the pipe. Reporting to your operators. So you're midstream and you shut in your lines, that backs up down the line, and your operators, your wellhead stuff have to vent, right? It's one of the number one problems we've always had in New Mexico is we don't have enough pipeline takeaway. So we end up, on my side as a consultant, I end up with the problem at my midstream stations when they shut in and they vent down, but then they back it up into my operators. And so we end up with a problem there. So we've got two sets of problems, and that is what they're trying to reduce. They want to know when you're going to call. They want your operators. So if you're midstream and you're going to shut something in, they want no less than 14 days prior for scheduled events for you to notify those operators so they have time to shut in and do things to prevent the unnecessary venting. As soon as but if it's an emergency, as soon as possible, but no later than 12 hours after discovery of an emergency or the need for an unscheduled maintenance, you've got to notify those operators that are back there so that they can know what the upstream needs to do to shut in their own operations to minimize the venting and flaring they've got. Now, some of this piggybacks with the fact that New Mexico is looking at their ozone rule because of the issues they've got with ozone. And so this is all tying together with these sets of rules. So if you've got it, you need to notify the agency for venting or flaring that exceeds 50,000 cubic feet in volume and either results from an emergency or malfunction that lasts 8 hours or more cumulative within a 24-hour period. Now, the question I get asked, is that a daily 24-hour period? Is that rolling? My understanding is that we're considering that a rolling 24-hour period. That's going to be consistent with what we see in other regulations. But if it happens at 11 p.m., you don't get to restart your clock at midnight. You're going to need to look at that 24-hour window and did you exceed it for when you're going to report it. Preventing and flaring that equals to 50 MCF, but it's less than 500 for a single event. You need to notify the division filing your C-129s. The 115Bs aren't getting you out of these C-115s or the C-129s. No later than 15 days following the discovery or commencement of venting or flaring. So you need to make sure you're doing both sets of forms here. Preventing or flaring that equals or exceeds the 500 million or the 500,000 cubic feet or otherwise qualifies as a major release. You need to notify the division verbally or by email as soon as possible and not later than 24 hours following the discovery. That's just a straight 24 hours. It's not a business days. So we need to always make sure of that. You know, I know some states, all the states have their different requirements, whether it's 24 hours, the next business day, but New Mexico OCD, it's a 24-hour notification. Happens at 8 a.m. one day, you've got to notify by 8 a.m. the next day. So you'll need to get your stuff together to have it ready and make the notification. You're also going to notify no later than 50 days following the termination of a venting or flare event. You're going to have to file another C-129 form. They do love their C-129s and 115s. Yes. Well, but then you got to do when you end it. So if your event is ongoing, okay. So that's your notice for your 24-hour notice that you've got to, if your event started. If your event goes on for several days, you've got to file it when it ends as well. So that's where it can be two parts on some of these. If it's a short-term one where you just have a pipeline release and a blowdown, it all probably did occur in the one 24-hour event, and you can do it that way, and you're good. It's my ones that last more than 24 hours that we have to make sure we come back and do the next form on it. Unfortunately, there's more of those than I think we would like to have happen, but it is what it is. Monthly venting and flaring reporting requirements. Beginning October 1 of this last year, you're going to gather the data for the quarterly reports. Again, this is the 115B report, like I talked about, we did on the wellhead side. Those are going in. They went in February 15th. You've got your next one coming up, and then you're going to go to the monthlies. So the 15th day following the second month. The operator shall specify whether it's estimated or measured reported volume. And filing the initial report, the operator shall provide the methodology measured or estimated using calculations and industry standards. So if you did your little text limited file, you realize that you've got your little column you've got to put in there for how you did it. And that's one of the things they want with it as they're going through these reports. I will ask, has anybody in here gotten any comments back from New Mexico on the C-115Bs that we filed in February? I've seen the letter for people who didn't file, but I haven't gotten a comment back on any of the ones we filed. So I didn't know if anybody, I keep asking, has anybody else heard anything? Nope. Okay. Just curious because I haven't gotten anything back on the ones we did. Where are we doing this? Their overall goal is to get down to a 98% reduction from where we are today. They want this done by December 31st of 2026. And so this is a pretty major reduction in emissions. So they're going to have you do a step down each year, and they're going to take your baseline based off of the fourth quarter we just did and this report coming up in May and create your baseline. And then you've got your reduction metrics based off of that value from there. And so they're going to look at what it's going to be for each of it. So your percent increase, if they show that your baseline capture rate now is 0 to 69%, then going forward, you're going to need to have your capture rate is going to need to increase by 5.6 to 19.6 as you step up till you get to that 98% overall reduction. That's what they're going for, is a 98% reduction in it. So you want to look at where you are there. February 28th of each year, beginning in 2023, the operator shall submit a report certifying compliance with its statewide gas capture requirements. The operator shall determine compliance with its statewide gas capture by reducing or by deducting any alarm credits. And so the alarm is where they're going to allow you to go in and file some of the stuff with an advanced leak repair monitoring. So this is going to be some of the stuff I'll say Karen's talking about. What are going to be our next technology? What's going to be the next thing this industry is going to do to show they're detecting, and that continuous monitoring type method she's talking about? What is that going to look like? Unfortunately, this rule is probably going to have us play our hand sooner than we might like with EPA and a rule development. And that's a card that we probably don't want to play today, but we may have to, because we're going to have to start doing these and looking at it as to what we can monitor as an industry and try to reduce our emissions and show where we can say where the reductions are. Luckily, these won't all go all in until we're supposed to get that proposed rule, according to what Karen said earlier. So maybe the hand won't get totally tipped yet, but we want to look at it there with it. And so we'll have to go for those reduction credits. You'll have to file on these and they'll get approved with the agency. And these are going to be, so what was the technology used, the dates on which the leak was discovered, verified, isolated, and repaired, the method used to measure and estimate the volume of gas, a description of the date of each action taken, visual documentation or other verification of discovery, isolation, the certification that the operator didn't know or have a reason to know the leak or release before discovery using the alarm technology, and a description of how the operator used the technology as a routine and ongoing aspect of its waste reduction practices. So this is where I think this is going to be the documentation that EPA needs, I think, to go forward down the road. If we're using it, and I don't know who else is going to use the alarm and how much we're going to use it initially. I think we probably are going to be we'll see some of it come in this year and into next year. I think we're probably going to look at 24 and 25 before we see a real rollout of this in New Mexico with this technology, as everybody kind of proves what they want to do and checks it into how they're going to meet their goals for New Mexico. An operator that uses a division approved alarm technology to monitor for leaks and releases may obtain a credit against the volume of lost natural gas it discovered if discover the leak or release using the technology in the operator. You've got to isolate it within 48 hours, repair the leak within 15 days, timely notify, that's our C-129s again, use the alarm technology. For discrete waste reduction practices, such as aerial methane monitoring, the operator must use the technology at least twice a year. And for waste reduction practices, use an automated emissions monitoring systems that operate routinely and continuously. So this is that aerial technology where we're talking the flyovers and the drones. So they're talking about having that at least twice a year if you're using that as part of your alarm technology for looking at it. I have not seen that the division has published a list of their approved technologies yet. I will admit, I haven't looked in the last probably week or two because I was busy doing emissions inventories. And I need to go through and look at it. What questions do you guys have on this lovely rule and all of it?